See You Now is a podcast highlighting the innovative and human-centered solutions that nurses are coming up with to solve for today's most challenging healthcare problems. Created in collaboration with Johnson & Johnson and the American Nurses Association, and hosted by nurse economist and health tech specialist, Shauna Butler.
We asked healthcare workers to just be essential workers and power through it for 3 years, and people are done powering through it.
Our demand for healthcare as a country continues to increase, but we have not done the best job of increasing the number of workers to keep up with that demand.
In healthcare, we understand that there are root causes for things that happen, and we need to look at the root causes that have caused shortages.
I think it's time to say, what are the lessons we learned about how our workplaces are not serving people? And stop assuming that people are going to suppress all human biological and psychological needs just to get through the day for these types of careers.
Welcome to See You Now. I'm Shauna Butler. Anyone following the headlines or counting on our healthcare systems is well aware of the significant, urgent, and ongoing challenges facing healthcare. We're flooded daily with news about what's not working in healthcare. It's no secret the worsening nursing vacancies, understaffing, and career exits have serious implications for care quality, workforce morale and safety, patient experience and access to care, and the financial stability of our healthcare systems. Striking a more hopeful and helpful tone, as we dive into 2023, See You Now is turning the spotlight on those taking action to learn what's needed, what is working and gaining traction, and what's building momentum.
It makes your community healthier when you have more nurses.
We're looking at other industries and what they have done and learning from some of their mistakes as well.
We can put up with a lot of things, a lot of inconveniences, a lot of things that make us tired, a lot of things that make us stressed if we feel respected, valued, seen, heard, and invested in.
By far, the number one reason why nurses are looking for a new role is they're looking for career advancement.
We want to be that place where you go, you start your career, and you can have a multitude of different experiences.
That again helps lengthen our nurses' career and gives them flexibility.
Whichever healthcare group figures out how to take an asset-based perspective on their nurses and build the kind of workplace that works for people in their lives, it's going to make a lot of people happy if they figure this out. But if they don't, we're just going to keep paying the price.
Given the intensity and severity of the healthcare workforce crisis, we're taking a deep dive to better understand work cultures, mindsets, and programs that prioritize building a diverse, thriving, supported workforce where people and their careers flourish. In conversations with nurses and health system executives in the U.S. and across the globe, the stress, vacancy rates, workplace conditions, quality and safety of care are top of mind, with everyone desperate for immediate actions they can take to stem the loss of talented and skilled nursing professionals, as well as ensure they're building cultures and careers that attract and inspire the current and incoming generations of healthcare professionals. Over a series of 3 episodes, we're going to explore how we're reimagining our relationships with work, what nurses are seeking, and what they need to thrive in their careers, and how nursing leaders and healthcare employers are listening, learning, and evolving. In this first of 3 episodes, we poke at the broad questions and psychology of what people are seeking from their work and workplace, what business cultures and mindsets truly support a person's natural desire to do impactful work, and particularly at this moment of significant social change and systemic levels of recalibrating how, why, and where we work, what leaders must do for their workforces to be energized and empowered, where the focus on thriving isn't just about recovering from the impact of the pandemic, but more importantly, coming out the other side doing even better. So let's dive in.
My name is David Yeager. I'm an associate professor of psychology at the University of Texas at Austin. I focus on the psychology of motivation, and now I'm working on a new book that's going to be called 10 to 25, The New Science of Motivating Young People. And it's really about what leaders can and should be doing to help motivate this next generation while also helping them deal with the stress and threats to well-being that young people are facing.
I understand your wife is a nurse practitioner.
That's right. Yeah. So my wife is, she's a pediatric NP. For a long time, she was pediatric in the ICU. And now she works in the ER and also does primary care. And in addition, she gets probably 10 text messages per week from friends who have crises who need her to give nursing advice to them. You know, she'll work an 8-hour shift and then she'll have 15 charts. And then it'll be at home on the couch charting while 3 friends are texting her about babies with RSV. So she's a nurse all day.
So you are living the life and the experience of the intensity and the severity right now of what's hitting our healthcare workforce.
Right.
You've got that interesting lived experience where it's hitting you at home, but you're also seeing the headlines where we have a workforce that is stressed, that is overwhelmed, that is frightened, that oftentimes doesn't feel supported. It's a high level of the segments of the healthcare workforce, not just the nursing workforce, feels like they're not sure who they can trust, you know, whether it's policymakers, whether it's their leadership within their institution, their professional leadership, and even increasingly now, even with patients. It just feels like an environment that's grown quite hostile. And what we're seeing as a result of that is many people in healthcare, nurses in particular, saying, I don't think I want to be here anymore. This is not what I came here to do. I'm not able to do what I want to do, which is actually take care of people and solve problems, help them to be on a journey for better health. And it's not just on an individual level. This is system-wide. So we're coming to you as a psychologist to help us think about this at a system level, at a psychological level. We're wondering, you know, when you talk about a thriving workforce, people who are energized, who are connected to a mission where they can do meaningful work, things that actually matter. What do you know about workforces and mindset and cultures where people do thrive and feel very connected to purpose and meaningful work?
Right. Well, it's a big question and a big topic. Let me just tell you what the basic social psychology says about stress. So all the things you listed are what we would often call a stressor. And a stressor is, of course, anything your body has to respond to. But what society often gets wrong in talking about stress is they make stress synonymous with stressors. In fact, a stressor can be good or bad. So for instance, if there is a patient that desperately needs your care and you're the best person in the best position to do it, it's kind of stressful to do it in time and to provide the care you need, but it's really gratifying and fulfilling. What people miss is that there's another part of the stressor, which is the amount of support you have or the resources you feel like you have in order to meet the demands of that stressor. So being in an urgent care situation where you desperately want to do a good job, but then you're pulled in 13 directions and you're not being supported and you don't have the equipment, right? So that's where you can think of a ratio of the demand to the resources you have to meet that demand. And this is true in almost any profession. I think a lot about teachers, which is another stressed out profession right now. And teachers are asked to help students catch up from basically 2 years of not going to school. And they're asked to do it while the kids themselves are dealing with mental health crises with less money and less training and less support than ever before in an increasingly politicized environment in which everyone's blaming teachers from everything from the demise of ethics in our society to international competitiveness. So like nurses, teachers are under fire in a lot of ways. And in many ways, they kind of just want to do the good work. So I think that the biggest thing from a psychological perspective is how do we allow people to meet the rigorous demands of a profession that they chose to enter because they found those demands meaningful by providing the sufficient support to allow them to do so. The second huge insight from psychology is that resources can both be psychological and material. So a material resource would be something like pay or staff or effective equipment that allows you to perform certain procedures. Could even be a good scheduler who gets the right number of people on for the right patient and caseload. Resources can also be psychological. So in our work, we focused on the idea that if you think that stress itself is always bad, then you start getting stressed about how stressed you are. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. And in fact, a lot of what makes us feel exhausted and anxious and stressed is not the events themselves, but what they might mean to us. Like, what does it mean that I'm so stressed right now? Does that mean that for the next 40 years in this job, I'm never going to be able to take a break? Does it mean that no one will ever value me and my contribution? Does it mean that they're going to keep squeezing me and pinching me and getting more hours out of me and giving me less training? It's usually what something means that makes us stressed more than what it actually is. So how you even appraise or think about the meaning of that stress can be a resource. And we've done experiments to show that.
So let's talk about growth mindset. What is it? And some examples of what it looks like in practice.
Yeah. So growth mindset is your belief about whether something can change. You could have a growth mindset about your intelligence, like your smartness can change. You could have a growth mindset about the state of the world. You could say even terrible political situations can improve over time. Mary Murphy is a professor at Indiana University, and she's really taken growth mindset from characteristic of an individual to a quality of an organization. Looking at tech firms, for instance, there are some tech firms where their motto is to hire the smartest engineers and just let them go be smart in a room, and whatever the smart engineers come up with will be the smartest invention. So that's a fixed mindset culture. And what happens is that fixed mindset culture gets shown to people in hiring, in casual conversation, in performance reviews, and deciding who gets promoted and how and why. All of those culture communicating decisions convey whether your organization is a place that's open to growth and learning, or is it a place that is just trying to find the talented people and get rid of everybody else.
So those cultures that have sort of a fixed mindset, what do cultures who have a growth mindset, what do they look like? What are the core pillars that are defining of aspiring to and then becoming a culture of growth?
First of all, there are different goals. So your goal in a growth mindset culture is to improve your performance and your ability and your team's performance. In a fixed mindset culture, your goal is to demonstrate that you're the best or that your team's the best, and therefore that other people are worse. So it's all about showing high ability, or at least preventing yourself from showing low ability. That's the fixed mindset culture. And with those goals come different interpretations of and statements about mistakes and difficulties and frustrations. So in a growth mindset culture, a mistake is a learning opportunity. Some people even use that language of learning opportunity. And they say, okay, let's look at the mistake. Let's see what happened. Let's try to understand where it came from, and then let's address it. In a fixed mindset culture, a mistake is like the tip of the iceberg. It's like revealing some deep deficiency under the surface, something to be ashamed of. And therefore, people hide their mistakes. They don't confront them, and they don't want anyone to know about them. You see these two cultures happen a lot, but there's an advantage in thinking about them as cultures, because culture is something that can be changed. It's not easy to change, but it can be changed if we start sending different signals.
What kind of signals would you send to be undoing a fixed culture and building a growth mindset culture?
Yeah, so earlier this year, I emailed the CEO of Microsoft just to talk to him about growth mindset and fixed mindset cultures, and because he's written a lot about that. Huh? And amazingly, he got back to me in like 3 minutes. And so I met with him and I said, I want to find the most growth mindset managers at Microsoft and understand what they're doing, because you've been trying to set your culture, but you're the CEO and not everyone listens to the CEO, right? It's where the rubber meets the road is your direct reports and frontline managers. And if they're saying something different, then you're not going to have a coherent culture. Over time, I ended up talking with a lot of great people in HR, the people who coach and train the managers, especially when they're new managers. And one of the biggest things you see about a fixed mindset culture is they might espouse the growth mindset ideas, But then you look at who gets promoted and who gets hired, and it's mainly on touting individual achievement, not on how much you invested in and grew others on your team. And so one thing Microsoft's trying to change is how do you change the incentive structures and the leadership so that one of the things you brag about in your performance review annually is the number of people who got better at their jobs because they worked with you, or the number of people who took on such a leadership role that they were promoted. And then now the organization is more efficient and effective because you have loyal, dedicated, and committed people who are well-trained and that are trusted. So I think a big thing is how you do performance reviews and how you reward and give bonuses and so on to leadership. Is it based on their own individual kind of talent and performance, or based on how excellent they made the people around them? Another thing I've been learning from expert growth mindset managers is they are thinking 6, 12, 18 months out about the growth trajectory of people they manage. They're like, what do you need in order to be at your next level in your career? And that's a regular conversation and check-in. The organizations that don't grow people that well might have some professional learning credit, you go do it, but no one talks to you about it ever. It's never a part of your growth plan. It's not really how they see you in the future of the organization.
Say more about that from the perspective of organizations that have career planning. In the last 2 years, we have seen many nurses leave the profession. We've always seen nurses who are in the retirement years. We expect, they've worked 30 years. We expect that they're going to retire. The challenge with that is that we lose a huge amount of expertise. 20 years of expertise is not found in the newest members of your profession. But in the last 2 years, what we saw is an exit. The largest exit was in our youngest, our newest nurses. So what that means is that we've lost energy, we've lost beginner's mindset, we've lost the next 20 years of a talent pipeline. And I have to say, the last 2 years, talk about the hardest time to start your career in nursing, when all hell broke loose. Basically, you had the least amount of support and everybody in your system was dealing with a novel situation where they didn't have answers either. It's understandable why so many people would be, I didn't sign up for this, I didn't get the support that I needed, and I felt traumatized. So going back to that piece of institutions and organizations that have career planning, that have career guidance and coaching, a long-term trajectory around your career, and then thinking about career longevity, that's a big question.
What you're describing with nurses is happening in almost every industry. So Gen Z right now is the shortest tenured at their jobs in almost any major industry, including Fortune 500 companies, supermarkets, teaching, nursing. And part of that, I think, is because my generation was told you just have to do kind of crappy jobs for a long time, that eventually it turns out. And I think younger people are like, wait a second, you guys are suckers. Why did you put up with that? Like, why don't you just right now ask your boss to create a workplace that's actually a good place to be? The great managers I hear from talk about how work is where you spend most of your adult life. Like, you spend more time there than you will with your friends. So why are we all okay with it being a terrible place to be? So I think good managers think carefully about that. I'm interviewing this grocery store chain that is the best at keeping and retaining young people. And that's a kind of stressful place too, because you're constantly like cleaning up stuff and everyone's yelling at you, and your boss could be kind of looking down on you. But what they do is they just make it very clear that they have a plan for you. And it may not be that you're the manager, but it is that we are here to support you to become better at your profession, to be more proficient, and to be more, frankly, more respected. And I think a lot of it comes down to whether you fundamentally feel respected and invested in your organization. We can put up with a lot of things, a lot of inconveniences, a lot of things that make us tired, a lot of things that make us stressed, if we feel respected, valued, seen, heard, and invested in. So what does it mean to do that for people? I've kind of built on the growth mindset concept, and I have a new concept that I call the mentor mindset. And the mentor mindset is really anyone who's in charge of somebody else, has the potential to be in charge of someone else, has the opportunity to be in a mentorship role. It may not be a formal mentor that you're assigned to go have coffee with on Tuesdays afternoon, but they position themselves in a way where your growth and learning and improvement is something that they're invested in. And mentor mindset leaders do two things. First, they hold you to a high standard with performance, but second, they provide the necessary support so you can meet that high standard. And I contrast that not just with fixed mindset, but with an idea I call enforcer mindset. That's the idea that someone just has really high standards, but they don't care whether you meet them and they're not going to support you. And the other contrast, besides enforcer, is what I call protector mindset. That's the person who says, everything's so hard for you. It's okay. Like, I don't expect anything of you. Just do the minimum. But that kind of feels disrespectful because it feels like you're being treated as though you can't do anything. And it feels like you're being looked down on. So the mentor mindset, it feels good when you're treated that way because you're being respected and taken seriously, but you're also being supported. And if I could change anything, it would be for businesses, healthcare, law firms, government agencies, schools, et cetera, to move more toward a mentor mindset.
You had mentioned, David, the generational differences in the workforce, what those expectations are, the career movements, the tenure within each one of those. What do you think people need to know about the generational differences and drivers that are existing in our workforce and how institutions, companies, different participants of the workforce, how do they need to understand that and respond to it in the way that's the most helpful?
Yeah. One, most of the things we talk about generations, they're invented by journalists who want to sell books or consultants who want to sell a talk on how to talk to Gen Z. And so a lot of them are overblown. And the reason why I say that is because deep down, what human beings want and need more than anything is to be treated with dignity, to be respected, and to have a chance to make a contribution. That's true if you're 78. It's true if you're 22. And it's been true throughout human history. So I think a big part of it is just appreciating that the goal of how we interact with people, treat them with dignity, treat them with respect, give them a chance to contribute, is the same no matter what. At the same time, culture evolves over time. And so our culture has evolved, and the young people who happen to be young today are young at a time when culture is different. And in particular, I think there is less of a desire to wait around and trust that things will get better if you put in your time. Partially because, honestly, since 9/11, we've been waiting for things to go back to normal, and they haven't. The generation of 21-year-olds now has just always lived in chaos. And that'll affect you. That's an important difference. They haven't been in a world where there weren't metal detectors in airports and so on. I think the positive way to frame it is that they're ready to matter. We keep young people in school for such a long time. They're in training for so long. And we just say, you'll matter later, like when you're 25 and, almost have a mortgage. But biologically, puberty is like a sign that you're ready to matter, right? So like when you were 13 or 14, you were keeping the tribe alive in our evolutionary history. So we keep people under lock and key for an extra 11 years. And it's not surprising at all that young people want to make a difference younger and sooner. So I think that we really have to think carefully about how we structure the workplace so that we are attuned to these deeply human needs that all of us need and want, but that the most recent generation is demanding sooner. And you can't really fault them for wanting to be treated like we get to be treated as adults who have more status in society. So I teach large introductory and upper division psychology classes. Probably 30 or 40% of my students will eventually be nurses. It's a female-dominated major, and a lot of people go from our program into nursing school. At any rate, my class is all about how they're going to change the world. I actually call it using behavioral science to change the world. And every team has to come up with some glaring disparity in society that they're tired of looking at and come up with a behavioral intervention that has the potential to change it. One group is going to work on the problem of adolescent adherence with immunosuppressants, right? So 35% of teenagers who have organ transplants don't take their immunosuppressants, and then they lose their organs. It's unbelievable. It's fully outpatient behavior and psychology management problem. It is not a problem with the immunosuppressants or with the surgeries. So the young people are going to fix those kinds of problems. They're going to see solutions that the surgeons who've been in the field since the 70s are not going to think of. And they're either going to change the field of nursing, or they're going to change the broader narrative around healthcare. They're going to be on school boards. They're going to be on local and city government. And so I think that one of the biggest reasons to have a mentor mindset about young people is that they are defining our future, and our future is in their hands. So we shouldn't have this protector mindset of you can't do anything, because who else is going to do it if not the young people?
Indeed. Who else is going to do that? You're talking to a lot of leaders in industry. If you could reach out to leadership who are running health institutions, who are running policy, what are the recommendations that you want to make to them as far as recovering from a really traumatic experience in healthcare, and not just getting beyond it, but getting better as a result of it?
Yeah, I think that we asked healthcare workers to just be essential workers and power through it for 3 years. And people are done powering through it. And I get it. I think it's time to say, what are the lessons we learned about how our workplaces are not serving people? And stop assuming that people are going to suppress all human biological and psychological needs just to get through the day for these types of careers. And start creating the kinds of workplace that we would have wanted to work in. And that can actually be a fun challenge. And we can involve people that are not served by the current hierarchy in the design of that, because I bet they have a lot of good ideas. Whichever healthcare group figures out how to take an asset-based perspective on their nurses and their nurse managers and build the kind of workplace that works for people in their lives will have so much more efficiency. You won't have HR problems like you do. And again and again, and we have so much waste because we don't take our employees seriously and we don't respect them. And I think some healthcare leader out there is going to make a lot of money and make a lot of people happy if they figure this out. But if they don't, we're just going to keep paying the price.
Yeah, and that's it's too heavy of a price. We can't afford to not do this. We can't afford to not get this right. Thank you, David. Thank you. It means a great deal, and great thoughts and advice that I know are going to hit a lot of hearts and a lot of minds and change behaviors and move us to a growth mindset, a mentor mindset.
Yeah, great. Well, I hope it's helpful. And, it's clear that you really have the well-being and really the predicament of nurses in your heart and in your mind. And I think that's what people need.
Coming up next, we examine what nurses are experiencing, needing, and seeking in their work lives and careers with Iman Abuzaid, a leader finely attuned to the healthcare workforce and on a mission to help healthcare professionals live better lives and help them find and do their best work.
The U.S. turnover for nursing right now is at 23%. It's the highest it's ever been in the history of U.S. healthcare. By far, the number one reason why nurses are looking for a new role is they're looking for career advancement. Number 2 is flexible scheduling. Number 3 is something to do with geography. I'm relocating or I'm trying to shorten my commute time. And then number 4 is compensation. And it's in that order. That's the frequency of how often it comes up. It's felt most acutely in nursing, but it certainly is affecting many other healthcare professions as well. Now more than ever, market forces are at play and leaders are paying attention. And more programs and strategies and tactics are being implemented because frankly, they have to be.
Thanks to our episode guest, David Yeager, who is an associate professor of developmental psychology at the University of Texas at Austin and co-founder of the Texas Behavioral Science and Policy Institute, where his research focuses on the psychology and science of motivation. We are inspired and grateful that over the past 2 decades, he has studied how to design and implement effective growth mindset interventions and learn from organizations and their people what genuinely works. Thankfully, David is unapologetically optimistic about the future of our society and, based on his experience, research, and proximity, convinced that the youngest members of our workforce are ready to do impressive things. if we surround them with a culture and climate that supports their natural desire to do meaningful and impactful work. For See You Now, I'm Shauna Butler. Keep listening.
Nurses are transforming healthcare through innovation, compassion, and leadership. And Johnson & Johnson is proud to continue its 125-year commitment to champion nurses through recognition, skill building, leadership development, and more. The American Nurses Association is dedicated to building a culture of innovation. Nurses improve the lives of patients and communities through innovative thinking, empathetic connection, scientific rigor, and sheer determination. ANA is proud to support and advocate for our nation's most valuable healthcare resource, our nurses. For more information on See You Now and to listen to any of the earlier episodes in our library, visit seeyounowpodcast.com.